Hi there, I'm Clara, and today we're going to cook something simple and delicious while learning English. Let me tell you a little secret. When I first started learning English, the kitchen became my classroom. I struggled with words like teaspoon and bowl, and following recipes felt like solving a puzzle. But over time, I found that cooking was the perfect way to practice new vocabulary and have fun doing it. In this video, you'll learn how to talk about ingredients, kitchen tools, and simple actions in English. Whether you're a beginner or just want to brush up on your skills, this will be a tasty way to learn. Before we start, don't forget to turn on the subtitles and repeat the words and phrases with me. Trust me, it helps a lot. Ready? Let's jump into the kitchen and see what we're cooking today. It's a bright afternoon, and the kitchen is full of possibilities. On the countertop, we have all the essentials: a bag of flour, a jar of sugar, a bottle of vanilla extract, and a few eggs. Next to them, there's a big bowl, a whisk, and a couple of measuring spoons tools we'll use as we go along. Today, we're making a simple cake. Nothing too complicated, just enough to help us practice a few common words and phrases in English. Let's start by getting familiar with some of these ingredients and tools. Here's the first one, flour. Can you say that with me? Flour. It's what we use to make bread, cakes, and cookies. Next, we have sugar. This one's easy, right? Sugar. It makes everything sweet. Over here is a bowl. Say it with me, bowl. This is where we'll mix everything. But here's the catch. I had a little challenge when I first read this recipe. Some of the instructions were in English, and I wasn't sure what words like teaspoon meant. Have you ever felt that way, looking at instructions in a different language? It can be tricky, but don't worry, we'll figure it out together. Let's take a closer look at this recipe. The first step says, mix the flour and sugar in a bowl. Pretty straightforward, right? Mix means to combine things. We'll do this step in just a minute, but first, let's explore the rest of the instructions. Learning English in the kitchen might seem unusual, but trust me, it's one of the most practical ways to learn. Now, let's grab our ingredients and start cooking. This is where the fun really begins. Let's get started. The first step is to mix the dry ingredients. We have our flour and sugar ready. The recipe says, mix the flour and sugar in a bowl. So we'll take this big bowl, remember, that's where everything comes together, and pour in 1 cup of flour. Then we'll add half a cup of sugar. Now, here's the fun part. Do you know what mix means? It's when we combine things together. Say it with me. Mix. Great. Let's take our whisk. This is called a whisk. It helps to blend everything smoothly and start mixing. Can you say, mix the flour and sugar? Perfect. Next, we move on to the wet ingredients. The recipe says, add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 2 eggs. Let's break this down. A teaspoon is a small measuring spoon, usually used for liquids or small amounts of spices. Let's find our teaspoon, measure out the vanilla extract, and pour it into the bowl. Can you repeat after me? Add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Good job. Now for the eggs. We need to crack them open and add them to the bowl. The word add is very useful in the kitchen. It means to put something into a mixture. Let's say it together. Add. Wonderful. The next step says, mix all the ingredients until smooth. So, we're mixing again. This time, everything flour, sugar, vanilla, and eggs comes together. Look at how the mixture changes as we whisk it. Smooth means no lumps or bumps. Let's say it. Smooth. Finally, the recipe says, pour the mixture into a baking pan and bake at 350 degrees for 25 minutes. Here's a new word, bake. It means to cook something in the oven. Repeat after me, bake. We'll take our pan, pour in the mixture, and carefully place it in the oven. While it bakes, let's take a moment to practice what we've learned. What does mix mean? That's right, to combine. And what's a teaspoon? It's a small spoon for measuring. What does bake mean? Excellent, it's to cook in the oven. In just 25 minutes, we'll have a delicious cake and a whole new set of English words under our belt. Let's check back in a bit to see the results. While our cake is baking, let's take a closer look at the new words and phrases we've learned today. Understanding them will make it easier to use these terms in everyday situations. First, let's talk about mix. This word is essential in the kitchen, but it's also useful in many other situations. For example, you can mix colors when painting or mix ingredients when making a salad. Can you think of another situation where you might use the word mix? Next, we have teaspoon. This is a small spoon used for measuring ingredients. Remember, there's also a tablespoon, which is larger. Knowing the difference is important because a recipe can change completely if you use the wrong one. For example, add 1 teaspoon of salt is very different from add 1 tablespoon of salt. Another key word is add. This simple verb means to put something into a mixture or group. In the kitchen, you might add sugar to tea, add milk to coffee, or add eggs to a cake batter. But you can also use add outside of the kitchen, like when you add items to your shopping cart or add a new friend on social media. Finally, let's revisit bake. This word specifically refers to cooking in an oven, like baking cakes, bread, or cookies. Think about how you could use it in a sentence. I want to bake cookies this weekend. Now let's practice. Repeat these sentences after me. Mix the flour and sugar. Add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Bake the cake for 25 minutes. Amazing! You've already mastered so much. Understanding these words will make following recipes and practicing English a piece of cake. Now it's your turn to practice. Let's see how well you remember the words and phrases we learned today. I'll ask you some questions, and I want you to answer out loud. Don't worry if it's not perfect, just give it your best shot. First question, what do you do with flour and sugar at the beginning of the recipe? That's right, you mix them. Excellent. Now, can you say the full sentence? Mix the flour and sugar in a bowl. Perfect. Next question. What tool did we use to combine the ingredients? It starts with yes, a whisk. Great job. Can you say this sentence? Use a whisk to mix the ingredients. Here's another one. How much vanilla extract do we add? That's right, 1 teaspoon. Remember, a teaspoon is the smaller measuring spoon. Now say this. Add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Well done. Let's try a practical activity. Imagine you're making cookies. What's the first thing you might do with the dry ingredients? You would mix them, right? And if the recipe says to add 2 eggs, what would you do? Add the eggs. Fantastic. Now, let's practice with baking. If I say, bake the cake at 350 degrees, what does that mean? It means to cook it in the oven. Perfect. Can you repeat the sentence after me? Bake the cake at 350 degrees. Great work. Lastly, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Can you describe one step of this recipe in your own words? For example, add the sugar to the bowl. Try it, and I'll be sure to read your responses. Congratulations! You've not only made a delicious cake, but also learned several useful English words and phrases along the way. Today you practiced words like mix, add, teaspoon, and bake, and you use them in real-life situations. That's a huge step forward in building your confidence with English. Remember, learning a language doesn't have to be boring. You can make it fun by integrating it into everyday activities like cooking. Each small step you take, whether it's learning a new word or trying to use a phrase, brings you closer to fluency. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more fun and practical ways to learn English. And don't forget to share your version of this recipe or your favorite kitchen words in the comments below. Keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, happy learning and happy baking.